Hi, in this video we're going to set up a pair of Citrix Director servers. We're going to basically install a SSL certificate so we can use HTTPS to connect to our Director URL. We'll load balance our Director servers on the Netscaler. We'll set up a dedicated load balancing monitor for Citrix Director to probe the backend Director servers. We'll create a responder policy which appends /director to the end of the director URL. We'll also do HTTP to HTTPS redirection. We'll look at some of the grooming settings for director. We'll look at some policies within Studio related to Citrix Director, so things like process monitoring and app failures. We'll then also look at integration with nmaz using the director config tool, as well as some other bits and bobs. So let's begin. So I'm on my first director server here, lon-ctx-dir01. I'm just going to mount the 1912 media and kick off the installation. So I've just mounted that to my CD-ROM drive. Let's open that. Wait for the installation to start. Spec-wise, director servers, I typically have 4 vCPUs and either 8 or 12 gig of memory. I find that's pretty much about right for sizing director servers. If you go onto the Citrix documentation, you'll find some information about the operating systems supported. It typically supports most of the latest operating systems, 2016, 2019, 2012 R2, and pretty much all of the latest browser versions as well. So spec wise, as I say, 4 vCPUs and 8 gig of memory or 12 gig of memory is about right. So to kick off the installation, we're just going to click on Start. We're going to click on Citrix Director. This will kick off the installation. Okay, we'll accept the licensing agreement. Click Next on this. Now we need to enter our delivery controller address. What I tend to do here, especially when I've got multiple Citrix Director servers, I put a delivery controller in here, and it's specific to that director server. So this director server will point to lon-ctx DDC01, whereas our other director server will point to lon-ctx-DDC02. That way, if we've got an issue with one of our controllers, director will continue to work. So I'm just going to pop this in here. Okay, we'll do test connection. Put our FQDN in. Doesn't like the NetBIOS name. Click on test connection. You can see there the connections come back as green. So we'll click on add. You can see now that controller has been added. We'll click on next. Windows Remote Assistance is used for the shadowing feature. So when you're using Director and you want to shadow sessions within Citrix Director, it does use Windows Remote Assistance. So a little bit later on in these videos, I'll show you basically how to configure group policy to configure the remote assistance settings. So your help desk admins will be able to provide the shadowing through Director. So as I say, we need to install Windows Remote Assistance to be able to use that, so I'm going to leave that ticked. These are the firewall ports, port 80 and 443. If you are using the shadowing, the remote assistance, you need the RPC port 135, as well as the RDP port, which is 3389. So they have to be opened from the director server to your VDAs if you're going to be using the shadowing functionality. So I'm going to click next on here. Click on install. It's going to list all the prereqs. So as part of the prereqs, it installs IIS, .NET Framework, C++, and because we've enabled the remote assistance, it's also going to enable that Windows feature. So we'll click on install, and now the installation will start. What I'll do is I'll pause the video and I'll resume the video once the installation has finished. I'll go through exactly the same steps on our second Director server. The only difference is, as I say, I'll be using a different delivery controller. On our Director 02 server, I'll be pointing that to our DDC 02. So I'm going to pause the video and resume once the installation is finished. Thank you. The installation of our Director servers has now completed on both servers. The installation took about 10 to 15 minutes. There was various reboots for .NET and the C++. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to break the next videos out into separate sections because we've got a lot to get through in this Director configuration. So the first part, the first section, we're going to install and configure an SSL certificate on both our Director servers. So when we connect to Citrix Director, we'll be using HTTPS instead of HTTP. The next section, what we'll do is we'll load balance both our Director servers on the Netscaler. So that will involve adding both Director servers to the Netscaler, creating a load balancing service group, creating a load balancing virtual server, creating a dedicated Director monitor, binding it all together, installing the Director SSL certificate, configuring all the persistence settings on the load balancing V server. The third section will configure single sign-on for Director. So we'll use integrated Windows auth to pass through our Windows credentials so we don't have to log on. And then the final section will just talk about a few miscellaneous topics such as the grooming settings, the remote assistance, group policy settings, as well as configuring Director to communicate with our nmaz appliance. So let's begin. So the first thing I want to show you is just the default behavior. So Director's just basically been installed. I had the pop-up box to say the installation's finished. It gave me the option to open Director. I just didn't tick that and then click finish. So here we are. So if we now click on Citrix Director, what you'll notice, it connects via HTTP and you get this message saying that you're not using a secure connection. There is a little trick you can do if you haven't got the possibility to use SSL certificates. You can get rid of that annoying message every time. So if you come into IIS Manager under Sites, Default Website, Director, if you click on the Application Settings, right at the bottom there's a UI Enable SSL check. If you set that to false, that will get rid of that annoying error message. But as we're using SSL certs, there's going to be no need to do that. So I've got an enterprise root CA, so we're going to request a new certificate. Our URL is going to be citrixdirector.carmo.com. So to request a certificate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into IIS, and then under Serve Certificates, I'm just going to create a domain certificate. The common name is going to be Citrix Director.carmo.com. The organization is just going to be Carmo. The OU is going to be IT. City is going to be Coventry. The state, province, West Midlands. And then the country, GB. So we'll click next on that. Now we need to specify our online CA. So as I say, I've got an enterprise root CA, so we're going to use this to sign the certificate. So we'll click on OK. Friendly name, we'll just use Citrix Director, carmo.com. Click finish. And now we've got basically a certificate now installed on this first Director server. So we now need to set this up in the IIS bindings. So if we go to the default website,
click on bindings, click on add. We're going to add a HTTPS binding. There's no need to put a host header because we haven't got multiple websites. So we'll just create under SSL certificate, use the drop down, choose Citrix Director, click on OK, and then click on close. So that's that done. That certificate is now installed on our first Director server. What we need to do, we need to install that same certificate now because we're going to be using load balancing. We need to install that same cert on our second Director server. So to do that, what we need to do is we need to export it out with a private key. So if I bring up the MMC console, add remove snap in, click on add, computer account, next, finish, OK on that. And then if we go to our personal store on our first Director server, we should now see that new certificate that we've just requested. So you can see here citrixdirector.com. We've got a private key that corresponds to the certificate. So we need to export this out. So to do that, all tasks, export. We want to export the private key. We're not going to include all certs in the cert path. There's no need to do that. Click on next. The password, I'm just going to enter a password. File name, I'm just going to drop it on the desktop. I'm just going to call it Citrix Director.pfx. Click on save, click on next, click on finish. So the export's successful. So what we need to do now is we just need to copy this to our second Director server. So I'm just going to bring up Windows Explorer. I'm just going to pop this straight onto the root of the C drive. Okay, so that's done. So if we now log on to our second Director server, we now need to import that certificate. So if we go to the root of C, there's our PFX file. We'll double click it. It's important that you select local machine, not current user. So we'll click on next. Next on that. We're going to enter the password. We'll mark the key as exportable because it's always handy if you ever need to export the cert with a private key in the future. So we'll do that. We'll automatically place it in the correct cert store. Click on finish, and now the import was successful. So what we now need to do is we need to go into IS Manager, and then if we bring up the default website, go into bindings, click on add the HTTPS IS binding. Again, there's no need for a host header. We'll click Citrix Director SSL cert, click on OK, click on close, and that's now done. So the certificate's been requested, it's installed, we've set up the IS binding, so we should now be able to use HTTPS to connect to our Director server. So let's test that. So I'm going to open Director. You can see by default that link takes you to HTTP. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop HTTPS into that. So HTTPS, and there we go. So you'll notice there's a certificate error here. That's to be expected, basically because the common name doesn't match. We're using in our address bar here, we're using HTTPS ://localhost. The certificate common name is citrixdirector.com. So obviously, because there's a mismatch there, the web browser's moaning about it. When we create our load balancing V server for Director and install the SSL certificate on the Netscaler, and then create a DNSA record that points to that VIP, this error will go away. This is nothing to worry about. This is to be expected at this stage. If we click on continue to this website, you can see it connects us to Director. If we click on the cert, you can see there mismatched address, which is what I said previously. If we click on view certificate, we should see our certificate here, issued to citrixdirector.com. So everything's working as expected. We've got the certificate now installed on both Director servers. We've set up the IS bindings. So this completes this first section. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. and then I'll resume, and then we'll start the next section, which will be the load balancing configuration for Citrix Director on our Netscalers. Okay, thank you. So we're now ready to set up our load balancing configuration for our Director servers on our Netscaler. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take a copy of our PFX file that we exported out previously. So I'm just going to paste that locally on my local machine. I'm going to connect to our Netscaler. So what we'll do first of all, we'll install the certificate. So once we create the load balancing entities, the certificate's already installed and ready to be binded. So to do that, we need to come under SSL and we need to import PKCS12. The Netscaler requires PEM certificates, whereas the certificate we've got is in PFX format. So if we import it as PKCS12, it will convert it to PEM for us. So I'm going to do that now. So Citrix Director.carmo.com for the name. I'm going to choose local to browse for the PKCS12 file, choose my PFX file, add the import password. Encoded format's going to be AES256, enter a PEM passphrase, and that's the certificate now converted to a PEM file. So we now need to install the certificate. So if we come to SSL certificates, click on install, we'll give it a key pair name. So I'm just going to call that Citrix Director.carmo.com. I'm going to then choose appliance, and then I'm going to locate that PEM file. So that's it there. You can see there's our PFX, this is our PEM that got converted. So I'm going to click on open on that. For the key file name, the private key is stored within the PEM. There isn't a separate key file, so we'll use the same cert for the key. The password is the PEM passphrase, so I'm going to enter that. Click on install, and that's our certificate now installed. One other thing I like to do is just check the cert linkage, make sure it's linked to the relevant intermediate CA or root CA. As you can see, it's linked to my root CA, and my root CA cert's installed on my Netscaler. So we're good to go now from a certificate point of view. So we're now going to start creating the load balancing entities. The first one I want to create is a service group. You can add the servers before this step, then move on to a service group, but I just like to do it all in one go. So we'll create a service group first. So I'll call it CTX dir_SG for service group. The protocol will be SSL. I'm going to click OK on that, and then under no service group member, I'm going to add both of my servers. So under select server, I'm going to click on add. I'm going to type in the name, so it'll be lon-ctx dir01. We've got DNS functioning on the Netscaler. The Netscaler is able to resolve the FQDN, so we'll add the server by FQDN. So we'll enter the server name .carmo.com, click on create, and then the port number will be 443 for SSL. Okay, so that's the server added. You can see the service state is up, which is a good sign. We'll do exactly the same now for our second server. We'll change that to dir02. Again, we'll do it by FQDN. I'll change that and then add the domain name. Click on create. Port number's 443 because we're doing SSL. Click on close. Click on OK. So that's the service group now created. One of the things I like to do on my SSL service groups and V servers is literally turn off SSL v3. Typically you would do this through SSL profiles. When you enable the default SSL profiles, you get a default front end, back end, and then you can create custom SSL profiles with things like a Diffie-Hellman key and turning off like insecure protocols like SSH3, TLS10. But just for this video, we're just going to use the SSL parameters. So SSL v3 is off. Click OK. Click on done. And that's now done. That's our service group created. We now need to create our load balancing vServer for Director. So we'll give it a name. So CTX dir, and then we'll call it underscore vServer for virtual server. The protocol will be SSL. The IP address 192.168.3.207. I believe is a free IP, so we'll use that one. Port number will be 443. Click on OK. And then under service group bindings, we're going to bind our director service group. So I'm going to select that, click bind, click continue. And now it's asking us for our server certificate. So I'm going to choose our Citrix Director SSL cert, click select, click bind, click continue, and the vServer should now come up. I'm just going to check that and refresh. Okay, that looks absolutely fine. So we've got here CTX Director Virtual Server, and you can see it's up as we've got two service group members both in the up state. What I'm going to do is on the vServer itself, again I'm just going to turn off SSL v3. So just untick that, click OK, click on done, and that's good. So that's SSL v3 turned off. We now need to change the persistent settings, the sticky sessions on this vServer. So we're going to add the persistence. I'm going to change the persistence type to cookie insert with a timeout of 0, which basically is going to be a session cookie. We're going to use a backup persistence of source IP, and then the director timeout I believe is 245. Top of my head, I think that's right. So cookie insert is the primary persistence type, and then we'll use source IP as backup. Click OK, click on done. So that's the persistence set. We don't need to change the methods, we don't need to use round robin, etc. We'll just use least connection, that's absolutely fine. One thing we now need to do is we now need to create a new monitor. So the service group will be used, the members in the service group will have the default monitor bound, which is just either a ping or a TCP monitor. What we want to do is have a dedicated monitor that probes the backend director servers where it does a HTTP GET request. So we're going to just create a new monitor. So I'm going to call it CTX dir underscore mon. Actually do it -mon. So CTX dir -mon. The type of monitor that we'll be using is going to be a HTTP monitor. We'll select on that. We're going to add the response code 302, which is the redirect response code. We've also got the 200, which is the OK. The HTTP request, as I say, we're going to be sending a GET request, and we're going to be sending that to director, and then it's going to be logon.aspx question mark, and then it's cc equals true. Because we've got SSL services, we need to make sure secure's ticked. So it will do the SSL handshake. We'll click on create, and now we need to bind that monitor to our service group. So if we edit our service group, and then if we go to monitors, and then if we do no service group to load balancing monitor binding, we'll select our new monitor. So I'll browse for that, choose that one, CTX dir -mon, click on select, click on bind, click on done, and if we refresh a couple of times, just to make sure that the service group members are still up, which they are, which is good. If we click on edit, two service group members, select one of our service group members, choose monitor details, you can see here it tells you the response from the monitor. So we got a 200 response code. So our monitor now is intelligent, and it's actually probing our backend director servers, which is what we want. So that's done. There's a couple of bits I like to do on the vServer. So under the basic settings of the vServer, actually under here, So if we edit our Director vServer, under the basic settings, what I like to do is configure a redirect. So we redirect from port 80, so HTTP, and then we're going to redirect to https // director.carmo.com. Okay, so that's basically our redirect URL in. So it's going to redirect from port 80 HTTP to, and it's going to redirect to our HTTPS URL, which is what we want to do. So I'm going to click continue on that, and then click on continue, and then click on done. So let's test this out. So if we go over to our Director server, I'm just going to log on. If we were to go to citrixdirector.carmo.com, it wouldn't work at the moment because we don't actually have a DNSA record. So we're going to have to log on to our domain controller. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new DNS record in my carmo.com forward lookup zone. It's just going to be a record. So it's going to be citrixdirector.carmo.com. And that new IP address that we created, our VIP for our Director vServer, is what we want to point this to. So 192.168.3.207, I believe is the IP address. Yeah, 3.207, that's right. Click on Add Host, click on OK, click on Done. So if we fire up Internet Explorer, and then if we go to HTTP, let's just make sure our redirect's working, and then we'll do citrixdirector.carmo.com, and then if we press enter, what should happen is we should get redirected to HTTPS, which we have. So you can see it's hit the vServer, it's seen it was on port 80 HTTP, and then it's redirected us over to HTTPS. If we have a look at the stats of the Director virtual server on the Netscaler, we should see some vServer hits. So yeah, you can see there vServer hits is 2. So yeah, our load balancing vServers definitely working. One of my bugbears with Director is you have to actually append /director onto the URL. Because this is the default IIS page, and the Director virtual directory and the default page isn't set as default in IIS, so you have to actually append /director onto the end of the URL, and then you get taken to the Director page. You can see our certificate is working absolutely fine now. You can see there's no certificate common name mismatch errors now because we've actually gone to the same URL. That's the common name in the certificate. So that's all good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to fix that annoying issue where you have to put /director in. It really does bug me. So I'm going to go into App Expert, and I'm going to create a new responder policy. We'll call it res for responder, and then we'll do POL for policy, and then we'll do CTX DIR. We'll create a new action. We'll call it res ACT for action, and then we'll do CTX DIR. We're going to do a redirect. So this is going to do a 302 redirect, and we're going to redirect to / and then director, and then we'll put that in brackets. Okay, so that's done. And then the expression that we want to match on is HTTP request URL path equals /. So let me just find this. So equals, and then it's /. So HTTP request URL path equals /. If that expression's met, it's going to hit our action, and then that action is going to redirect to /director, which then has the correct virtual directory path within IIS. So click create on that. Okay, so we now need to bind that. So if we go into traffic management, load balancer, virtual servers, edit our Director V server, add policies, and then click on the plus sign. It's a responder policy, it's a request policy, and then I'm going to bind our responder policy that we've just created. We've got no other policies, so we don't have to worry about priority. Click on done, and now if we test this, so if we go back to our Director server, I'm just going to close out of IE. So what should happen if I type in https://Citrix Director .camo.com, and then if I do slash like that, what should happen is it should redirect and append /director onto the end, which it has, but for some reason it's saying the page cannot be displayed. So I'm just going to refresh that. Okay, yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. It looks like it's just the cache. I'm just going to clear out my internet cache and then try it again. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so let's do https://Citrix Director.camo.com. Yeah, you can see there it's automatically appended the /director. If we take that one step further, so if we do http://Citrix Director and then .camo.com, what this should do now, this should incorporate everything that we've done. It should redirect from HTTP to HTTPS, and then it should hit the responder policy, and then the responder policy will append the /director onto the URL as well. So this will test both. There we go. So you can see it's HTTPS and it's automatically appended the /director onto the URL. So that's the load balancing configuration. We've set up basically our V server. We've created a Director load balancer service group. We've created a dedicated Director monitor that probes the back end. We've done all the best practice on the V server, disabling SSL v3. So that's it. What I'll do in the next video, we'll talk about Director single sign-on, which will sign us into Director using integrated Windows auth. Okay, thank you. So we're now going to set up single sign-on for Citrix Director. So we sign into Citrix Director with integrated Windows authentication. So we'll have single sign-on configured. So to do that, we need to jump over to our domain controller. The first thing we need to do is we basically need to, on our Director servers, we need to enable Kerberos delegation. Because Director is not installed directly on the controllers and we've got separate Director servers, we have to set this option here, trust this computer for delegation to any service. This is because we'll be setting up a dedicated service account which will run our app pool on our Director servers. So that's got to be set. So I'm going to do that on both Director servers. Trust this computer for delegation to any service. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump onto the first Director server. We need to open IS Manager. If we expand the default website, and if we go into the Director web app, under authentication, what we need to do is we need to enable Windows auth, and then we need to disable anonymous authentication. If we go back to the Director virtual app here, we also need to change the advanced options as well. So if we come under here, Management Configuration Editor,
we need to browse to this location here. So it's system web server, security, authentication, and then Windows auth. There's two options here, use app pool credentials and use kernel mode. Use app pool credentials has got to be set to true, and use kernel mode has to be set to false. So that has to be set as well. Under the app pool, we'll save the changes there. On the Director app pool within IES, we have to click on Advanced Settings, and then under Identity, we need to change this to use our service account. So the actual service account I've got is called svc-director. So I'm going to enter the username and password for that. Confirm the password, and then click on OK. Actually, I think I mistyped that. I'm just going to re-enter that. Click on OK. Okay, it doesn't like that password. I'm just going to double check that service account just to make sure that's the actual correct account. svc-director. Okay, I'm just going to reset the password on it just to be on the safe side. Unlock the account. I'm going to put the password in here. Okay, so that's it done. So if we go back in here now, enter the same password, confirm the password, click on OK. Okay, it doesn't seem to like it. Okay, let's put the domain name in front. There we go. Yeah, it needed the domain name in front, so it's domain name / svc-director. So we've got that. Okay, so that's done. What I'll probably do now is I'll just recycle the app pool within here. Just click on recycle. That restarts the Director application pool. So that's all the configuration done on this server. So I'm going to do the exact same on the other Director server. So I'm going to jump over to that server. I'm going to sign in. Again, I'm going to open IS Manager. Okay, so first of all, we'll go into the Director web application. Under authentication, we'll enable Windows auth and disable anonymous auth. If we go back a level, and then under the configuration editor, same place again, system web server, security, authentication, Windows auth. Use app pool credentials, got to be set to true. Kernel mode should be set to false. If we go back to the application pool, double click it, go into the advanced settings, and then if we find the identity, we need to set it to use our custom service account. So it'll be Camo svc-director, and then I'm going to enter the password. Click on OK, click on OK, click on OK, and then I'm just going to recycle the application pool in IS just for those changes to take effect. So that's pretty much it from a Director point of view. There's one other thing that we need to do is we need to set up an SPN. So for our service account, we have to set up an SPN. So if I do set SPN -L and then svc-director, you can see there's no registered service principal names, so we have to register HTTP for Director and associate it with this service account. So to do that, we'll do set SPN, and then it's -s, and then it's HTTP, and then it's /, and then we've got our URL will be Citrix Director .camo.com, and then svc-director. Okay, press enter on that, and now that will register that SPN and associate it with that service account. So if we use the same command to list the SPNs for this service account, you can see we've now got a HTTP service principal name associated with the service account, and that's for our Citrix Director URL, which is citrixdirector.carmo.com. Okay, so that's all the configuration needed for single sign-on. There is some browser config that we have to do. I'll show you basically how to do that now. So if we come into Internet Options, what we want to do is under Security, under the local intranet zone, if we click Custom Level, we need to make sure this is set, automatically log on with current username and password. This option here, automatically log on with current username and password, which it is set by default on the local intranet zone. So what we have to do is we have to add our Citrix Director site into this zone. So I'm going to do that now. Actually, you can see I've did it previously here. So I've got both URLs here. We've got, let me remove that one, and then we'll show you how to edit. So HTTPS //citrixdirector.com, click on add, click on close on that, click on OK, and then click on OK. So I'm going to close out of here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all my Internet Explorer cache. So close all this out. I'm going to clear all that. Click on apply, click on OK, and then if we close our web browser, and then if we double click our web browser, if we go to our URL, citrixdirector.carmo.com, press on enter. What should happen is we should be single signed on using integrated Windows auth into Director, so we shouldn't be prompted for username, password and domain. It should just single sign us in directly using integrated Windows auth. So I'm just going to give this a few seconds. My lab's not the fastest. There we go. You can see single sign-ons completely worked. We wasn't prompted to enter any username and password or enter our domain. So our single sign-on for Citrix Director is all working and everything's been configured. So what I'll do is I'll stop this video now, and in the next video we'll go through a few miscellaneous tasks such as offering remote assistance, some director grooming settings, as well as integration with nmaz. Okay, thank you. This is the final video. I just want to go over some other miscellaneous settings, such as offering remote assistance, so your help desk and your Citrix admins can use remote assistance to shadow sessions within Director. We'll go through some database grooming settings, as well as the integration with the nmaz appliance using the Director config tool. So I'm just going to show you first of all the offer remote assistance. So I'm going to fire up the group policy management console. What you would typically do, I've created here just to speed up this video because it's getting quite long now, under the VDA OU. So under this is the parent OU. Under that we've got all the desktop OS and the server OS VDAs. At pretty much the parent level, what I would typically do is I'll just create a GPO at the top level, at the parent level. So I've called this one cc-citrix-remote assistance. If we edit that GPO, and then if we go under policies and then admin templates and then into system, and then if we look at remote assistance, this is the policy setting that you need to enable to allow the shadowing functionality from Citrix Director to work, so users can connect to sessions via Director, so your help desk and your admin staff, if users phone up with issues, you'll go into Director, do a search for that user session, and then from there you can shadow, which will send a remote assistance request. For remote assistance to work, you do need 3389 open, and the RPC port as well, 135 from the director servers. So that has to be open to the VDAs, which is where your user sessions will be. So just make sure those ports are open. So under here, remote assistance, this is the policy setting that we're interested in, the configure offer remote assistance. So you can see here I've enabled the policy. You want to allow helpers to remotely control the computer, and then I've added both my groups. I've added the helpdesk_admins as well as the Citrix_admins. So that will give them the ability to offer remote assistance unsolicited, so the users don't basically have to send a remote assistance request. This will allow Director to connect automatically to those sessions with remote assistance. So that's got to be set. As I say, the firewall ports 3389, 135 from the Director servers to the VDAs. You're good to go from the shadowing point of view. So that's that done. If we now jump onto our delivery controller, if we fire up PowerShell, if I run the command get-monitor configuration and press enter, you've got here all the grooming settings. So when you've got platinum licenses, you get 3 months of historic data. You can see here these are all set to 90 days. You can actually go up to I think the maximum's 367, which is just over a year. So you can basically increase these, which I recommend doing. It does increase the size of the monitoring database, but it just gives you a little bit more historic data. So when you're running reports, trend reports in Director, you can go back further than the default 3 months. So to do that, if you do want to change that, what you would do is you would use the same command, but you change it from get to set. So you would do set-monitor configuration. And then basically what you would then do is you would choose which retention you want to change. So for example, if we want to change the groom session retention days, we would just change that. So we would do groom session retention days, and then we would set that to 367, I think is the max. Press enter. And now if we do the same command again, get-monitor configuration, you'll see that's been set to 367, which I think is the maximum. I think that is the maximum you can set it to. So yeah, so that's a handy little tip. It gives you, as I say, more historic data, but you just got to be wary that it does increase the size of the monitoring database. So just keep an eye on that. The next option I'm going to show you is some policy settings which are related to Citrix Director. So if we edit this policy here, which is just our computer configuration, which is just going to be a base policy, if we expand all the way down and choose monitoring, these two policy settings here are pretty handy. Enable process monitoring. So when you're looking at the trends within Director, looking at the sessions, and how much CPU and memory usage and IOPS are being consumed, the enable process monitoring, rather than looking at the session level, it goes down to the process level. So within the individual sessions, you can see which processes are consuming the most amount of CPU and memory. Especially good if you've got like applications that have got memory leaks and consuming a lot of memory, or consuming a lot of CPU, so you can then do resource monitoring on those using things like WEM. So it's pretty handy. I typically enable that. Again, it does increase the size of the database, so just be wary of that. The application failures, so by default I think the server OS it's set to app faults only. If you've got desktop OS VDAs, I think by default it's set to prohibited, so you can enable that as well. So when applications crash and error out, and you get the event ID, the application failure event IDs. This will be listed in Director, so you can keep an eye on applications that are crashing, which is again pretty handy. So I typically enable that as well. You just got to watch it because, as I say, it does increase the size of the monitoring database again. So just keep track of that. So that's it. Yep, they're the two policy settings I'd recommend setting for Director. The final thing I'm going to show you is the integration with nmaz. So if I fire up Director on one of my Director servers, if we bring up the command prompt, okay, if we go to the root of the C drive, and then if we change to inetpub cd www root, and then if we go to Director and then cd tools, within here we've got a tool called Director config tool, and then if we use slash and then config Netscaler, what this will do is it'll allow us to connect this to our nmaz appliance. So what nmaz is nmaz is an analytics system. It allows you to view HDX Insight information using AppFlow. So you can add all your VPX instances, your SDX instances, your MPXs to nmaz. Once you've added them and discovered them in nmaz, you can enable HDX Insights on the Gateway V servers, and then you'll start getting information about round trip times, WAN latency, LAN latency, jitter. It's a really good tool for troubleshooting issues. You can also get all your certificate information. You can hook it up to syslog, SNMP. You can get email notifications when things are flapping up and down, things such as services, V servers, any hardware alerts on any of your physical appliances. You can do configuration audits, maintenance jobs, so you can push out firmware through nmaz. So nmaz is a really good tool. It's a free tool. I think you get 30 V servers by default. I would definitely recommend it if you've got a Citrix environment. It is an absolute brilliant tool and saves you a lot of time. What Director does is with this Director config tool, when you go into trends and then network information, it will talk back to your nmaz appliance and it will show you all the HDX Insight information for all your user sessions. So you can look at the ICA virtual channels, how much bandwidth's being used, the WAN latency, the LAN latency, the jitter, the ICA round trip times. So it's a brilliant tool, and I highly recommend hooking it up into Director. So this is how you do it. You basically add the IP address of your nmaz appliance. I haven't got nmaz at the moment, so I'm just going to put a false IP in there. So you would put your typically NSRoot password in there. For secure, you can have a certificate on your nmaz appliance. I'm just going to enter 0, and then this is where you get the choice. Netscaler Insight was the old appliance before nmaz came out. Netscaler MAZ, Management and Analytics, is the new version. So I'm just going to choose 1 there, and then what that will do now is it will integrate Director with your nmaz. So as I say, when you go into Director and log in and click on Network and Trends, you'll be able to see that. I'll show you where it is. So let me just log into Director. So if you come under here, Trends, I'm just going to make sure my compatibility view, yeah, that's not set, so that's fine. Okay, my lab's pretty slow. Okay, yeah, so when you come under Trends, under here, Network, when you've run that command that I've just ran and you've got an actual nmaz appliance, you will see all your HDX Insight information here. So you can do searches for user sessions, and as I say, you can see all their bandwidth, WAN latency, round trip times. It's a really good tool, so I would definitely recommend that. So that's it. So that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else Director related really we can go through. I'll give you a usage once I've got my storefront servers up and got some machine catalogs and delivery groups and some apps and desktops published. We'll revisit Director later on, so I can give you a kind of a help desk support view as well as a Citrix admin view of what Director looks like. I'll show you how to configure some reporting. We might set up as well the app and desktop probe within Director, which is like a logon simulator, which is pretty good in the newer versions of Director. I'll show you how to hook it up into the Citrix Cloud Analytics system as well. So I'll do that once we've got the environment up and running, because I say Director without any sessions, it doesn't really show you anything because it's got nothing to report on. So once we're further on in the course, I'll come back and give you an overview of Director once everything's up and running. Okay, thank you. Cheers, bye.